Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Avatar Anthony Ted. We're going to have a insightful conversation. For those that are new to the channel, we make mental health conversations and content that's going to be beneficial to your personal development, in addition to your well-being, right? But in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about mental health issues don't have a look, right? So someone can look successful, social, productive, and still be struggling deeply, right? I really want to take in consideration because a lot of us out here are pushing. And something that my pops would always tell me is that only you know what you're going through, right? So I want to take in consideration because some of us out here are working hard, right? We're having our own stresses. We have a lot of things that are going on when it comes to our family, when it comes down to our own problems, it comes down to work, school, different stresses. You know what I mean? Like, make the connections in regards to your life, right? But some of us kind of put on a mask to kind of hide or we suppress those emotions, right? But at the end of the day, we got to take in consideration of our feelings, our mood, all these different things, right? Because it affects how we, our actions, our behavior, right? So I really want to take consideration because, like I said, mental health issues don't have a look, right? So to normalize and reduce some judgment, right? So people often expect mental illness to be obvious, right? It's going to be sudden, sorry. So many individuals hide their struggles to avoid the stigma, burden other people, right? They don't want to be able to say that, my problems, your problems. I'm not trying to get people mixed up in the sauce type of thing. So they don't want to, But at the same time, too, like I said, for you to be able to function at your best, and highest potential, you got to be able to take these things in consideration. That's why I always advocate for the journaling, trying to write down what your emotions, getting in tune with yourself, right? Know when you need to take a break, maybe to get the rest, right? Self-care is very important, right? But pulling it back together, right? So functioning externally does not mean someone feels okay internally, right? So just like I said, just because someone's looking good on the external, got the makeup, they've taken care of their frame, doesn't mean that they have, the mental health and how they feel inside is totally different, right? So we got to be able to, like I said, make those connections. And for those out there that always, when you're having a conversation with someone, you ask them, how you doing? And the immediate thing that they're saying is, I'm good, right? Try to break the ice and kind of really see what's really going on. Because sometimes someone can be saying that they're good, but let's be real. We can feel the energy that, something's not right. They're not good, right? So let's, like I said, try to break the ice. But moving forward in regards to some psychoeducation, right? So mental health exists on a spectrum, often affects everybody differently, right? So everybody's gonna be different. What is different for me gonna be different for you, right? But you gotta be, like I said, try your best to be in tune with yourself. And by doing that is, like I said, having some type of self-dialogue, by having some, journaling time, so you're able to kind of build some rapport with yourself, right? So when it comes to anxiety, depression, trauma, burnout, grief can show up quietly in different ways, right? So everybody's capacity, everybody's worth ethic, and the things that they're doing is obviously going to be different, and it's going to show up in different ways, right? That's why I'm always telling people it's really good to address these things, because you don't want to put them under the rug. You don't want to be passive aggressive. You don't want to suppress these emotions, because they build up, right? Things don't just disappear, right? So we have to really, like I said, try our best to address this with support if necessary, right? Some things we can be able to do on our own, solitude, take a walk around, coping skills, etc. Like, those are really important. But at the same time, too, we need to get these thoughts, we got to get these feelings out. And by having a proactive, counselor, therapist, that can be able to be a good support as well, right? So some people have high a capacity, so they push for excellence, right? So that they're high achievers, or independent when it comes to their coping strategies, like I said. We also have emotional pain that doesn't always, show up visibly, right? Or some people's behavior, like I said, you have people that are kind of just like, they're kind of closed off, right? So they kind of just play neutral, like everything's smooth. But like I said, you're only hurting yourself if you're not going to be able to advocate for yourself, right? So you got to be able to take into consideration, we are human beings, right? We all have connectivity. We feel the emotions of sadness. We feel the emotions of anger. We all, you feel me? We connect on those things, right? But let's address what's really going on, because like I said, you're not weak. You're not dumb. You feel me? Let's really address these things that are going on in your head, because at the end of the day, you don't want to deprive yourself, right? You want to be able to support yourself, right? So struggling doesn't mean, like I said, someone is weak, and hiding it doesn't mean that, you're doing something that isn't real, right? So you got to be, like I said, be accountable in a way, address these things, advocate for yourself, seek that support, and really just have compassion. Stop judging yourself, stop pulling yourself down, because it's going to keep you down, right? In regards to practical reframing, in regards to how we're able to look at this a little bit more differently and respond differently, right? So avoid assuming someone is fine based off, like I said, their appearance. Like I said, someone could look fine, glitter, sometimes it don't, I forget the saying, but it just, you can't always look at something and just go based off the appearance, right? You don't know what's really going on behind the scenes, right? So I believe that the saying is like glitter. Just because it glitter doesn't mean it's gold, right? You feel me? So I really want to take that in consideration because, like I said, you need to be able to do your research, really assess what's going on. Someone could sit there and say, "I'm alright, I'm okay," right? Behind the scenes, they really broken, they're really down bad, they're depressed, but they don't know how to go about things, right? So try your best not to pick at them, right? But just have that compassion and understanding, you know what I mean? Like really be, neutral and soothing, so you're able to kind of have, them open up to their capacity, right? So lead with curiosity instead of, like I said, judgment. Check in with people beyond, like I said, the service level. Open up those conversations if possible. Create the safe space with honesty, right? And we got to be real, like I said, when it comes to these conversations, when it comes to integrity, right? How are we going to be able to trust and build, this connection if we're not being trustworthy, we're not being honest, right? And I'm just talking in regards to like effective communication, right? You want to be able to have connections with people where you're able to feel safe in, right? And we need to be able to kind of keep things confidential. So if someone's sharing things with you, right, they're expecting that to be between you and an individual, right? And that's why I always advocate for, like I said, counseling, because you're able to have these in safe spaces with professionals to be able to help you navigate through the situation, right? But like I said, I really think that it's really important to have an honest, safe place where you're able to build that rapport and that trust, because we all know that trust is something that's difficult and it is hard to build, right? Instead of, like I said, asking yourself and pulling yourself down with the negative mindset, like, what is wrong with me? I'm dumb, I'm weak, the people gonna be judging me, my coworkers, et cetera, et cetera. You have all these things going in your mind, right? How about you have a more compassionate and say, like, you know what I mean? What's really weighing on me lately? What's really going on with me lately? How do I feel? Like, really assess myself, right? Because, let's be real. Sometimes you know yourself more than anybody else out there, but that's what I'm saying. We have to spend time with ourselves to be able to build a rapport with ourselves, to understand ourselves, right? We're spending so much time allocating into work, kids, you know what I mean? You know your life, you know your situation, right? Everybody, you know what I mean? Like, you spend, whether you're shooting hoops and you know what I mean, you gotta do something that, like I said, half the time for yourself to be able to, like I said, understand what's going on with you, what's going on, you know what I mean? And things can kind of be mellowed out with that information. Moving forward, when it comes to micro action, right? So some things that we're able to apply, because when we know better, we tend to do better, right? So think of one person that you haven't checked in recently, you know what I mean? Think of somebody, right? So send them a message or give them a call, you know what I mean? How is things really going? If they say things are all right, things okay, right? So try to really, like I said, ease a little bit more, into the conversation with this individual, to really tap in with them, to really see like what's really going on and if they need some type of support, right? So if they're struggling, just, also to kind of just open up with yourself too, being vulnerable by opening up, you know what I mean? You're helping yourself in this sense, but you're also helping that other person out, right? So this is something that Ashley, shout out to her. She was a clinician at Discovery, at a program at my internship that I was working at. And she said, by helping other people, right? So loving yourself, you're loving others, and by loving others, you're loving yourself, right? So it's like a kind of, it's a heart, but it's just, you know what I mean? That's the power of positivity, right? So I really want to take that in consideration by opening up, by being true, by really being honest, by really, you know what I mean? It can really benefit someone else, right? But like I said, for people out there, please seek the support, because closed mouths don't get fed. No one can read your mind, right? So you got to be able to, like I said, seek the support, because it really will benefit you for the long run, right? Moving forward in regards to, like I said, a supportive reminder is that, like I said, support starts with making room for real conversations, right? Closed mouths, like I said, don't get fed. But at the same time, too, you really got to be able to, like I said, initiate, right? And be real with yourself, right? Mental health struggles are valid, right? They're not invisible, right? So like I said, everybody out here, we're human. We go through our ups, we go through our downs, right? You know what I mean? There's no need to sit there and hide from it. There's no need to sit there and kind of, ruminate and make yourself feel like, you have to believe these stigmas that are not going to serve you, right? Do something proactive. Do something that's going to help you get the results, right? And take care of your wellness and your well-being, right? This is a mental health channel. This is the platform. This is what we do, right? So really take in consideration that compassion is something that's going to be able to help us, right? But we got to be able to relieve our pain by what? Seeking that support. If you found this video beneficial, give it a thumbs up, share if possible, and I'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.